something to rejoice about. Yes, joy comes after baptism, not before. That's a good point. So, if it's taught properly, you're not saved till after baptism. So, yes, the joy would come after baptism. Verse 35, and when it was day, the magistrates sent the sergeants, saying, let those men go. It's not recorded here why the magistrates changed their mind. They may, there could be many different situations here. They may have realized what they had done was illegal without the trial or anything and shoved them into prison. It just doesn't record that. But we go into verse 36, it says, and the keeper of the prison told this saying to Paul, the magistrates have sent to let you go. Now therefore depart and go in peace. It would seem to me that the jailer was not wanting any more confrontation here. You all are free to go, just go. Just let the matter go. The magistrate may have also just wanted to sweep the matter under the rug, for they themselves had broken Roman law here. If they could just get them to leave and go away, there would be no investigation into what has happened. Nobody could say that they themselves had broke the law. Verse 37 says, but Paul said unto them, they have beaten us openly, uncondemned, being Romans, and have cast us into prison, and now do they thrust us out privily? Nay, verily, but let them come themselves and fetch us out. Like I said earlier, the magistrates had broke the law here. And now that they found out that they were Romans, they really had messed up. This would have been, if I can say this right, this law would have been the Valerian and Porcian laws. These laws exempted Roman citizens from degrading and shameful punishment such as whipping, scourging, and crucifixion. As I looked into that, and that went into effect. I don't remember the date now. When you were brought up before law, or you had something you were going to be punished, and you claimed you were a Roman citizen, it wasn't even a factor of looking into to see if you were actually a Roman citizen. It was that you were claiming to be a Roman and that the trial was needed. You couldn't just be shoved into jail. You couldn't just be whipped or beaten or crucified. If you were a Roman citizen, that doesn't say if you weren't a Roman citizen, those things can be done to you. So what they had done was violated a law that had been in effect for, I can't remember the date, popped out of my head, I believe for a couple of centuries at this time. So this was something that was very serious that they had done to Paul and Silas. This was something, if the magistrates were convicted of this, they could be put to death for doing that to them. That's how serious that law was. Verse 38, and the sergeants told these words unto the magistrates, and they feared when they heard that they were Romans. So again, the magistrates had a good reason to be afraid. To violate Roman citizens' rights was punishable again by death. This was also good too. It was punishable by death and confiscation of goods. So if you're dead, it doesn't matter much if your goods were confiscated, I guess, unless from your family. Verse 39, and they came and besought them and brought them out and desired them to depart out of the city. The magistrates were now asking them to leave. They wanted them to go away quietly. One might imply that they were very worried about what they had done and would like this matter to quietly go away, so they're asking them to leave. Verse 40, and they went out of the prison and entered into the house of Lydia, and when they had seen the brethren, they comforted them and departed. Paul and company, they just didn't sneak out of town. they went to see the brethren, and to comfort them. And who needed comfort more than Paul and Silas? But look who was doing the comforting. Paul and Silas had been beaten. Yes, their stripes had been washed. I can still imagine after something like that, you're going to hurt for a while.
Well, they were Christians. I mean, look at the apostles themselves. They weren't brand new when Jesus was taken. Where'd they go?
They split. But they went to...
Well, yeah, the new church and encouragement.
Pardon me?
The new church and encouragement.
Yes. Yeah. So they comforted the new Christians. Also, this is my opinion, take it for what it's worth, had they snuck out of town quietly, I think that would have left a mark on the new church and Christianity. Just by leaving quietly, they would indicate that, yes, they were wrong, and they were leaving town. That's my opinion. I don't know if that would be true or not, but that's what I think. Anything on verse 6 or chapter 16? Anything more before we move on?
I think it is interesting too that God allows us to stand up for our civil rights in some ways.
Absolutely.
For us today, especially in our nation, we have freedom to express, to a certain degree, as long as we act like Christians. You have those who are might be anti-American, or anti-national, whatever. But God allows us to express our civil rights.
Express our civil rights.
This story is a lot like when they come to Ephesus. It's the same thing. They mess with silver and money making, and they trump up charges that are different to take them before the magistrate there, and there's this thing over there too.
But also something else I think about. Sometimes it's okay to take the punishment to further the word. Sometimes we may have to take a hit just to further the word or keep the peace and let it go. I hope I don't have to be beaten, but hopefully we don't ever have to come to that.
They're not taking each other to court. Causing the church's name to be a reproach.
Absolutely. And if we act like Christians, there's no reason to go to court, is there? If we follow the word. Okay, let's get into 17. And it says, now when they had passed through, I'm going to try to pronounce these names, Amphipolis and Apollonia, they came to Thessalonica, where was a synagogue of the Jews. Note the word, or notice the word they. This indicates that Luke and Timothy was left behind at Philippi. So Paul and Silas were traveling on without Luke and Philippi. So this would indicate that they were left in Philippi to continue to teach the word there. Also notice that they went through 2 cities before stopping at Thessalonica. There's one theory I read, and it makes a lot of sense. The commentator was J.R. Dumlow, and he wrote, speaking of Paul, his plan was first to evangelize the seats of government and the trade centers, knowing that if Christianity was once established in these places, it would spread throughout the empire. So, and to me that does make a lot of sense. Where do a lot of people come to? Your trade centers. And where do they go when they're done there? They go back home. What do they take with them when they go home? Whatever they've traded for. Maybe they've found knowledge that they're taking back home. How often, I've noticed in my lifetime, the things that are going on the east and west coast, how long does it take to get to the Midwest? But it finally gets there, doesn't it? Not that it's always good, but the new trends start on the coast and come inward, if you think about that. So when people, and at that time, your coast, we didn't have the planes and everything that fly into the middle of the country. You brought everything in by boat and then spread it out through the country. Let me find my. Now, Thessalonica was an important seaport of southeastern Europe. The city was refounded in 315 BC by Cassander, the son of Antipater. I believe the original name was Therma and not Thessalonica. He renamed the city after his wife Thessalonica, and she was the sister of Alexander the Great. So and if you dig in, and there is tons of history, world history, right in that area. Now, verses 2 and 3 says, "And Paul, as his manner was, went in unto them 3 Sabbath days, reasoned with them out of the Scriptures, opening and alleging that Christ must needs have suffered and risen again from the dead, and that this Jesus whom I preach unto you is Christ." I come to think of this as classic Paul. If there's a synagogue, he's going to go there and teach. We see that several times in the New Testament. Now, he reasoned with the Jews through Scripture that Jesus was the Christ. If we look back or look forward here into Romans chapter 1 and verse 16, Paul here writes, it says, "For I am not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God unto salvation to everyone that believeth, to the Jew first and also to the Greek." So Paul typically would go to the synagogues or to the Jews first and teach and preach with them, and then he would take it to the Greeks. In this particular instance, he spent 3 Sabbaths with them preaching and teaching about Christ crucified. There had to have been, some reason at that point. 3 Sabbaths, basically 3 weeks, maybe, possibly a month, or 2 weeks. You're correct, 2 weeks. Something made him believe that that's as far as he could go there, and that he would take it to the Greeks. Something would have made him reason that he took it to the Jew first, they didn't accept it, and he went on. In verse 4, it says, "And some of them believed and consorted with Paul and Silas, and of the devout Greeks a great multitude, and of the chief women not a few." These were those who believed. Look at the makeup of this congregation, if you will. We have Jews in this congregation. We have Greeks in this congregation, which would have been proselytes. And apparently, we had some very prominent women in this. Prominent could be very successful men's wives or government officials of some sort here. So you had quite a mix of people in this congregation, and they believed. I'm going to stop here. It was a tough week. I didn't get completely studied like I needed to. But if you have any more questions or whatever, we will pick up at verse 5 next week. I apologize for not getting farther, but I tell you what, when I got home every night this week, I was wiped out. Any other questions before we are done with class? Okay, that's it for today. I'm sorry.
But just to get warm.
This morning.
Yeah.
Well, I know that it's the other day I drove to Parkland, not that much, but the running lines, you know, that's easy. And it's 4 hours.
she always